Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. Welcome to another episode of the ABAP Freak Show. Um, this week, you might notice Rich is with us again, and he's very large on the screen. Uh, we thought this uh, was a humorous setup. Actually, we're set up because Rich is going to do the in-system demo today, so that's why I have him full screen here. But before we get into that, as soon as he goes to his demo, we're going to lose his video. But we thought we'd start off a little more personable, and I was going to resize it down, but we thought it was kind of a humorous presentation here with him up in one corner, looming over me a bit. But hold on one second. Are we? Oh, and sorry about that. I was speaking for a few minutes there, and it hadn't transitioned to the next video. So you were just seeing the opening. I apologize for that. But welcome everybody. Little more technically challenging setup today, so hopefully we'll be fine. I'm not off to a great start there, but but welcome everybody. A little delayed this week. We didn't go out on Tuesday because of all the content with Sapphire this week. We wanted to kind of avoid that. We'll be back on a regular schedule next week, Tuesday. Going to have Lars on. Many of you probably know him as ABAP Git Lars, but we'll hopefully get to know him a little better and talk about some of his contributions to the community, as well as his thoughts on continuous integration, continuous delivery in general in the and in the ABAP space as well. So it should be a good time. I'm looking forward to it. But today we've got a very different topic for you. Maybe Rich, this was your brainchild. So maybe describe what we're going to have a look at today.
Yeah, so this came about last week, I guess, when I was getting back into working with the RAP RESTful ABAP RESTful programming model and building out some tables, and I wanted to load some data into these tables, and I'm not really a fan of having ABAP code, a particular method in my ABAP code that just has nothing but insert statements into a database table, which actually is what I started with, but I quickly was like, I don't like this at all, because I want to be able to change the data, and that's what I was having to deal with. The raw data that I was getting from, I was actually pulling my activity data from my Garmin device, and I had to manipulate it a little bit in Excel and whatnot and reformat. And I wanted an easy way to upload 1,000 rows to Steampunk. And I think I pinged you and I said, do you know any good way to get data into a table in Steampunk? And your answer was exactly what I have already done, which was do insert statements in a method, which you know I don't think anybody really likes to do. And the reason why we have to do something like that is because things that ABAP developers traditionally are used to using, things like the GUI upload and things like that. That's not available in Steampunk. So what do? Well, we write our own, right? And just figure out how to do what we need to do, right? But that's when you say, well, let's just write our own. I said, okay, let me take a look. And a couple days later, I said, well, I think I got this working. Now I need a UI. And so I said, I said to you, you want to throw a nice UI on it? And a couple hours later, we had a nice UI on it, and it was all good. So I thought at that time, why not just release it to the community to use? And as from what I understand, this is something that some of our customers has been asking for as well. So hopefully it'll be put to good use out there in the wild.
Yeah, it was interesting because earlier this week I got an email from somebody that said, "Hey, I just want to quickly create a table in ABAP on the cloud platform and upload data. Surely there's some generic tool to upload to an Excel file or anything from the front end into a custom Z table, and I was like, no.
Nope.
Usually people just write their own, and as you said, I think it's a little more complicated in Steampunk. Simply you don't have the SAP GUI. People are used to or they already have a program that maybe does some generic uploader, but it is probably calling CL GUI front end services or uploading that way. And we needed to do something over the web, to allow you to post a file in, and then how do you do that in a simple manner? Because a post operation isn't easy to do than say just a get operation. A get, you could just open the URL and do everything from the command line. We needed to upload a file, so we needed a little UI to help make it a little more comfortable. So
Yep.
so that was the genesis of this whole thing, and I think what we ended up with was pretty good. I mean, generic uploader lets you pick your target Z table and upload data and either append it or replace the data that's there. So for quick testing, prototyping, stuff like that, should make it really easy to get some data into your system.
Yeah, and I can't reiterate enough that what you just said about this being for prototyping and testing. This is not your ETL tool.
Yeah.
Do not try to load millions of rows of data. This is meant to just to be something to seed your Z tables with, so that you can prototype and learn from. So, not to say that you can't sit there and load 1,000, or I tested with 1,000. You could probably do more than that, but it's not to say that you can't sit there and upload 10,000 files with 10,000 rows in it one at a time. That's on you. But if you try to do something that's very, very large, I assume that this is going to break. So.
All right. Well, why don't we show it to them? You've cleaned it out of the system, so you're going to install this like anybody would coming from the outside. So,
Right.
If you want to go ahead and share your screen, and let's walk everybody through the process.
Yeah. So can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, like I said, I've cleaned out the system. It's totally gone. The tool doesn't exist here. This is the Steampunk trial system. One of the instances of it. So once I install it here, it'll be you can use, if you're on this trial system, you can use it straight away. But I have a Z table here. I called it the ZRH test. I have 3 columns in it, other than client. So column A, column B, and column C. Very simple.
Oh, I thought you were doing something with cola, like Coke or something.
No. But yeah, this is my table. There's currently nothing in it. Let's see here, data preview. I cleaned this out yesterday. Yeah, nothing in it. So we're going to load data into this table. First, before we do that, we have to pull in the handler class for this tool. So we're going to use ABAP get to do that. So I'm going to come here in ATT and link that up. And I'm going to log on. Right. Package. I've already created a package for this. So ZAFU. Pull after the link. Finish. Okay, we have the pool running. We refresh, and now we have our class here. Let's take a look at this bad boy. All right, so everything's self-contained here.
But just remember, when you pull something in via ABAP get, it's automatically inactive.
Right, which was going to be my next point.
Okay.
So at this point, if you try to go and create a service, a HTTP service over top of this, it's going to bark at you and say that your class doesn't implement this interface, and the reason is because I don't have it active yet. So it's very, very important to activate this class before you go to the next step. But before we do that, let's just look and see what we have here. This is a basic HTTP service handler class. We have the single method here, handle request, which is the main entry point here. We're checking what the um, the request method is. If it's a get, then we're doing this logic. If it's a post, then we're doing this logic. I'm not going to read all this, but it boils down to the get request actually handling uh, the dropdown, which you'll see in a minute, for showing us all of the available tables that you can choose from, which Mr. Young had put that in for us, so appreciate that. And then the post section is where we actually take the data that you've uploaded, break it apart, um, uh, format it in such a way that it's consumable by the rest of the code here. And then we simply create a dynamic internal table, um, deserialize the JSON, and inject that data directly into the table with this insert statement here. So very dynamic. It does make assumptions here where it assumes that the column names in your JSON file correspond to the column names in the table one for one. So that's very important to make sure that your structure of your JSON is exactly the same as the table itself.
Does the
So
order matter, or just the name
probably
matching?
I would assume that the order matters. I haven't tested otherwise, but I assume the order matters. The
Uh,
number, yeah. So it's like I said, there's not a whole lot of intelligence built into this. It is what it is, and it expects things a certain way. Of course, we can probably add more robust features into it going forward, but as it is today, column A, column B, column C, it has to be that way in the file.
Okay. And of course, we're going
Okay.
to release this open source. So if somebody else wants to maybe improve the upload logic, or add another file format or something like that, they can contribute it to the open source sample too.
Right. Oh, and just one other thing, I just want to show off the beautiful code that Thomas Young has done for us. This get HTML method is all of the front end UI code that it takes. So when I first did this, I actually my UI code was actually 2 lines of code. Now it was crappy, but nevertheless there was no intelligence built into it. But this is what generates that front end. So that's pretty nice.
We'll come back to the front end in a minute after people have a chance to see it.
Right. Just one more thing I wanted to point out, just because I'm like that, you will notice in this code, for whatever reason, I decided to go non-Hungarian notation.
Well, I know what
Uh,
reason.
yeah, and I proved my point. I hate it. Um, but there it is for you guys to enjoy Rich Heilman's code without Hungarian notation. So yeah. So I've activated this class. My next step is to actually create the HTTP service over top of this handler class. Now, as we understand it, the ABAP get tool doesn't handle this HTTP service object. So this is why we have to do this manual step. Um, I guess we can talk to Lars about that next week.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we'll do is we'll go here and we'll create the handler class, or the HTTP service itself. Going here and saying connectivity, HTTP service, and then we'll give a name. We'll give it that name, and it automatically pulls in the name of the class based on what I've typed up here as the name. But if we named it something, if we name the service something different, we can override that and point to the class that we need. But at the end of it, it has to point to the handler class that we just imported. So we can click next and finish. And now we have our HTTP service, which in my experience over the last couple of days, it takes a couple minutes for the underlying objects in this service to propagate throughout. So if I go to the UI right now, it's probably going to give me like a 404 or 403 or something like that. So we'll just I'm just going to kind of ramble on for a minute or two
Well,
while
we
that
got a
does.
couple of questions.
Okay, let's do
One
that.
is, where can we find the upload sample? Um,
Okay,
do you want to go ahead over to GitHub, and we can
so so well, let's. Should we just make it live?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Right now,
Okay.
it's a private repo as we were preparing it because we were going to go live with it on the live stream. So there is the URL, and I'll put it in the chat as well here. But why don't you go ahead and go into the settings and make it public so everybody can get to it? Like
Yeah, that sounds
we're
good.
making a big ceremony out of this or something while we wait for the for the caching to propagate.
Let's see here.
You
Which
got to put in your
password does
GitHub
it?
password though.
Which password does it want? I don't
Your
really know
GitHub
which
password.
No, it's not that one. I try. Let's try this one. Okay, that one's good. Let's see here. Manage access. Manage.
I think it's in the I think it's up in the options, a little further up. Um,
Where is it?
under security, there's a little button that says "Make it public."
Organization members can't change repo visibility. What?
Well, we had planned this big ceremonial going live here, and I guess we'll have to send a request right after this to make it live.
Yeah, so we'll make it live, but this is where I want to be eventually is the ABAP file uploader.
Sorry about that. I thought we'd for sure be able to make that live ourselves, but
we just decided to do that 17 minutes ago, so it's not like whatever.
yeah,
We'll do it. Anyway, this is where you'll find it.
yeah.
Under the SAP samples slash ABAP or dash file dash uploader. But we'll make all of that available, and probably before lunch we'll do that. All right, so now that we've done that, and we allowed the system to create our underlying objects, we can go ahead and launch that. So we can click the URL here, and I'll log on, sap.com, password, and what we get is this beautiful UI, which again, fully featured front end, right? So I expect, so I typed in some search here. I typed in ZRH, and it brings me back all the tables that begin with that. So let's do like another one, slash DML, and you can see all the tables here. So that works quite nicely. Thank you, Mr. Young. So here I can just go ahead and choose my test file, and let me show you that real quick.
Yeah, there was a question about what the format looks like.
Yeah, it's just JSON. And today we only support JSON. It's because of how the files are packed. So as of right now, just JSON. I guess we'll add in common delimited at some point. That's not too terribly different. It's just I have to do something different when it's common delimited, so we can just break that out and put that code in there. But as of right now, just JSON. So this is what it looks like. I have 1,000 rows in here. So I generated this data using Excel, and then I saved it as a common delimited, and then I used a node module to actually convert it from common delimited to JSON, and it did a very nice job for me. So that's how I wanted to be able to do this, is very quickly using tools, as opposed to having to copy and paste lines and start changing values and stuff like that. I want to be able to generate a large amount of data quickly, as opposed to having to do it by hand. So yeah, so just JSON, just like regular old JSON. So I can go ahead and pick this file here, and I'm going to say if I knew there was data in the table, I could say replace. In this case, there's nothing in it, so I could just say append. Then I click upload file, and it comes back and it tells me that the table is updated successfully. That easily. So let's go back to ABAP and Eclipse.
Well, you're going to acknowledge that dialogue first, aren't you?
No.
Oh,
no, I'm not. Actually, I was going to ask yesterday, is there any way that we can make that messaging better?
Yeah,
Um,
I could put it in
'Cause-
a UI5 toast
yeah,
message box.
we'll get to that because
Yeah,
I do have some error handling in this. Like for example,
I think I meant to do that to turn that into a toast message, but
yeah,
just didn't
we'll
get
have to
back
do
to it.
that because it's kind of ugly. But I do have some error handling in here. I am checking that the table name is actually valid, and we're using the XCO library to do that. So something that's newly released as well to check that the table name is actually valid. I'm also checking for the file extension here. So again, only JSON supported today. And also if we have things like um, if you try to append to a table and you get duplicate inserts, it'll also catch that and report that out to the front end as well. So there is some error handling here. Not everything is caught, but hopefully some of the major things. Anyway, if we go back to the table
Yeah,
and we
let's
look
see the
at
data.
we take a look at the data here, data preview. I have all of my
Yay!
data here, nice and beautiful, right? And it's all there. It's only maxed at 100 right now, so I can change that to 1,000. It's all here. So that quickly, I have 1,000 rows in my table. I can develop against this and see how things work and whatnot, right? So very quickly getting data into your tables as opposed to having a bunch of inserts in your method, which is what we wanted to get to.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. Maybe go back to the code and you showed the part where you validated the table. Maybe also show the value, the how we're filling the suggestion box because that's also using the
Yep.
the new XCO APIs.
Yeah, so here basically you're using the XCO APIs to build out a SQL, right?
Yeah, I don't.
And-
Yeah, basically, you because you can't just go select against the DD tables.
right.
That's not allowed in the Steampunk, the ABAP on cloud. So there's this new repository interface that lets you query the repository, but also create objects dynamically. It's incredibly powerful. Um, a little different to work with here. Like I said, had to build the contains pattern, and basically I'm taking whatever you've typed into the input box and then just putting the percent sign on the end as a wildcard. The only thing that I was missing that at least I couldn't find in the API, I would have liked to have done a limit. Um, so say limit the results to 200. Pretty common when you're doing SQL. And particularly like when you start typing, the first query comes back in and it's just a single letter, you're going to get a ton of results.
Hmm.
So it would have been nice to be able to limit that. Sometimes it takes a couple seconds for the results to come back because of that. But yeah, I couldn't find a limit. But other than that, it worked quite nice.
Yep.
And you can see here we're only getting database tables because the second command, you see the repository objects TABL. That's there. Actually, if you did a value help at do a completion there, you'll see. Whoa, what did you do?
My bad.
Yeah, you're gonna just move it somewhere else so you can try it.
Yeah.
Just take the TABL off, and yeah, you'll see all the different object types that it supports that you can query, and this is how you're limiting your repository search to certain object types. So that's why
The
we're only getting database tables back at that point.
Good stuff. This XCO library, this is powerful stuff. And our buddy Andre, used it for the wrap generator as well. So it's definitely powerful stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the other part that I wanted to talk about was the UI, not so much what's going on with it, but we cheated a little here, I think.
Yeah, I
I,
think we did.
I mean, normally if you were building a cloud application, something for the SAP Cloud Platform, you'd go over and you deploy your UI. Even if you were going against Steampunk, you'd probably deploy it in its own app router, um, and then it would connect to and consume your services, your REST services, your OData, whatever. But we wanted an all-in-one thing that was encapsulated in the class. So this is maybe not a best practice, and certainly not terribly scalable to on the UI side as far as maintaining the code. You can see it's a little nasty, but we thought this was kind of a quick and dirty solution, considering the UI isn't terribly large, is to just embed it in the class so that you have the single HTTP handler endpoint that both handles the file upload and serves out the UI, so that we can basically distribute this as a single class, and then it's largely a one-click upload, other than linking it to the HTTP service, but there's no configuration, there's no deployment necessary to an app router or the UI5 repository or anything like that. But that meant just sort of hard coding the UI5 code here in a string, which certainly makes it challenging to maintain. I found I missed the syntax coloring for one when I was maintaining this. It makes it a little hard to troubleshoot, but you kind of, once I had the basic, I actually just did it in a local HTML index HTML file on my local machine and tested it out there first until I got it pretty much where I wanted it, and then put it in this format. Actually took it over to Notepad++ so I could add the ABAP line delimiters here, like the brackets, to put it into a multi-line comment. And then sucked it up here, and then maintained it in this afterwards. It's not a whole lot. We got fancier in probably what we needed to here, like putting the shell bar on and stuff like that. But it also meant I didn't want multiple files. I didn't want to do a view and a controller and a manifest and everything. So I'm having to create all the UI controls in code, which also is not necessarily a best practice. I mean, it certainly for so don't take this as an example of a great way to do UI5 development, but for a small little bit of code that's bootstrapped within the HTTP service handler itself, it certainly is handy.
Yeah, I like it because it's all in one. It's clean. It's simple, right? That's what I dig about this, is so I'm not spread over so many different objects and things like that. It's just all self-contained. That's what I like about it.
Yeah, DJ suggests that for the UI, I could have used a text XML view with the script tag, and embed it that way. I could have even, I could have done different handler endpoints and simulated the different files and sent them out as well. So there's ways it could have broke it up, certainly. Yeah. But it started off, like I said, as a quick and dirty solution, and then it grew a little bit as we wanted to get a little fancier with the UI. It was originally just supposed to be a file upload post and a button to send it up, and then we said, oh well, we need an input field for the table name, and then the table name, that would be nice if it had completion and stuff like that. So it grew a bit beyond what we originally intended.
Right.
And, the other thing here that's interesting, if you ever do have the need to do UI5 this way, I've done this a couple times, is making sure that you take advantage of and aware of the asynchronous loading of the libraries. So you'll see that here as I load the various libraries, then inside event handlers within that load library, then I create the UI controls that are part of that library. So like here at the end, I do the load library for SAP UI Unified, and only then do I create the file uploader in an inline callback handler of the load library, so that it doesn't try to create the UI controls before the library is completely loaded. So just Uh, fun additional little thing to point out there, I guess. If
Yeah, and
like I
this
said,
is
if you
why
ever
I
do need to take this approach.
this is why I asked you to do the UI because yeah, I didn't want to mess with any of this stuff.
Yeah, so pretty happy with what we have out there. Just trying to see if we got any other questions here. Of course, we'll get the repository live. Our big go live was spoiled by us not having the access that we thought we had to make it go live during the live session, but we'll get it
Well,
out there pretty shortly
that's
afterwards.
that seems about par for the course for
Yeah,
this week, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, probably.
whatever.
Um,
But yeah, I'll do a blog post, DJ, sometime today, and I'll put all this stuff in there, and then we'll go from there. But it'll be available today.
okay. Uh, Anything else you want to discuss on this particular sample before we? Because there is another question a little off topic that I want to talk about, and there's one other little small demo. But before we move on to any of that, I want to make sure that we've fully covered this topic.
I think I'm good. No questions? No other questions?
No, I think we've covered. I think we've covered everything that I see here in the chat.
All right, then I'll go back to being big.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to put you over here in the side just a little bit. There was just while there's a question, and it is a little off topic, and I see DJ answered, but I want to I'll go ahead and call it out from the stream. Um, Javier said asked maybe this question is out of scope for this session, but is it possible to serve OData v2 from a CAP Node.js application built with CDS and deployed on Cloud Foundry? And DJ rightly answered, yes, there's an OData v2 adapter proxy that you can use. And I've used it to great success. And actually, I'm in the process of rewriting a lot of the samples from the last OpenSAP HANA course that we did, Rich, the HANA 7 course, and updating them for CAP. And one of the things that I have done is gotten rid of all the excess OData, or I'm in the process of getting rid of all the excess OData and using CAP for everything. So of course I still have a lot of UI5 examples that are built with OData v2, so I'm having to use this proxy heavily. And I was just using it the other day, and actually I was really happy with it because not only does it give you that OData v2 compatibility, but it also lets through like the annotations in your OData metadata as well. So I was incredibly pleasantly surprised to see like my fancy smart table controls now adapting to the annotations from CAP, and that's something I want to show in an upcoming in the ABAP Freak Show in upcoming episodes. I'm going to go through that whole sample once I finish it. We're still working on it, but I thought that was a timely question because of what I was just working on the other day. So, yeah. Oh, you answered that question in the chat. That's good. The other thing that I wanted to talk about today is a little news item. And this is also shifting us away from the ABAP topic into the Node.js or CAP, or Node.js in general development or XSA development. But little bit of interesting news is that the SAP Node.js modules are now actually available on NPN, the main NPN public repository. So if you just come here to npnjs.com and you search for @SAP, you will see all of the SAP standard modules are now published out here. So I think this is really great that before we had our own private repository, npn.sap.com, and you had to set up a special rule to route the @SAP namespace to that repository. That's still being maintained in parallel for a little bit of time at least, but it didn't have a UI on it. So yes, you could access it via the NPN command line and things like that. But if you went to npn.sap.com, there's no user interface there at all. Actually, I'm not getting the. Did I have that right? NPN. I think it's npn.sap.com, the old site. But it did. Getting it to pull up at all, but regardless of the fact, it wouldn't pull up anything except a page to say that there was no that there's no user interface. But NPN.js, of course, not only are they available there with all the other packages, but searchable. When I click on one of the packages, I get the README. Much easier to consume. So instead of having to pull down the repo and look at the README there, I can see it here. So much better experience, I think. The only thing that I'll point out and why I know I've kind of this actually went live several days ago, and the only thing that is concerning or has held me back personally from promoting it too much is when we first uploaded it, and I'll go to one that hasn't been touched since then. The versions are not right. So look at this. It's 3.1.1. Let's look at the available versions here. Second, I gotta scroll down. Yeah. So see what it says. The current version is actually not the most recent version. And this is because we mass uploaded all the versions at once, and it was done in a batch, and then NPN automatically tags whatever the last one was to get uploaded, which wasn't necessarily the most recent version. And there's a ticket open, and people are looking at correcting this. Now, what has happened in the meantime? Anything that has been updated since then, like the HANA client was updated 2 days ago, it's correct. So if it's had a manual update, then the latest version is correct. And where this gets perhaps a little dangerous is like SAP CDS. If you have to install this on the command line to use or SAP CDS DK, the development kit. So you would install this Node.js module, and that's what gives you the CDS command line. And if you're doing that without a package JSON, if you're just doing from the command line npn install -g for global this package, then it's going to take the latest version according to npn, which right now for some of these modules would not be correct. Like this one, 1.3.1. But if we look at the versions, there's actually much more newer versions. So be cautious if you're manually installing. Of course, if you're using a package JSON and you're specifying a version, then that will work okay. But if you're using latest or if you're wildcarding the versions, then right now it may not pull the right version. So maybe be a little cautious about redirecting your NPN to out here with to this just yet. But I still think it's an exciting thing that we're doing this. And DJ pointed out that it's https://npn.sap.com, and there's no redirect on it, which is why I didn't get a page. So thank you, DJ. That's exactly what I was missing there. But you can see there was no user interface on the old site anyway. So you could only use the Node Package Manager. So that's where this experience is going to be so much better. Just as soon as we get the versions cleaned up on these, you have to be a little cautious then. Okay. Yeah. Any other points? Anything in the?
So there's a question in the chat that takes us back to ABAP for a second here.
Yeah. You want to
well, I don't know. Let's tag team it.
Yeah.
Javier says, is there a future without ABAP DIN Pros at some point in the future? Um,
Well, I think the future is now. If you're using Steampunk, there is no
yeah,
ABAP DinPro, Web DinPro, any of that there.
right.
Um,
I mean, that's the first part of the answer. But the second part is as long as we have customers still running 3.1H, um, there still is a world that has DIMPROs in it. It's just that I think our messaging is quite clear as far as our UI strategy going forward. Um, no DIMPROs, Fiori based type applications and things like that. So to answer your question, yes and no, but for all intents and purposes, I think if you're if you're if you're not exploring what is the Fiori UI scenarios, you probably should be, and stepping outside of that DinPro or Web DinPro bubble for a little while.
yeah. So if the question was, will the on-premise version also purge those older technologies? Yeah, I think there's too much still out there in our customer space, but that's the point of Steampunk, or more appropriately, the ABAP on the SAP Cloud Platform, is that it's a clean break. Is that you need to, you know, you don't just pick up. It's not a full S4 system. It's just the ABAP runtime. It's designed for building extensions, and most of that use case would be new things are being developed, you're porting something over. It was an opportunity for us to do a lot of cleaning up of not just getting rid of older UI technologies, but other APIs. You've noticed, we mentioned earlier, if you haven't tried it before, we couldn't just do a select from the DD tables to read the data dictionary to get the list of tables and fields and stuff like that. There's a whole lot of things that aren't allowed, and part of that is because it's maybe a multi-tenant environment and stuff like that. But most of the reasons around that is to really just clean up, modernize the ABAP environment, get rid of a lot of that legacy weight of UIs and frameworks and technologies, and focus on just the current stuff, and really get rid of a lot of that technical debt that we have in the ABAP environment. And that allows us to innovate faster there. They're able to do updates frequently in the Steampunk code line, and all that's possible because it is a leaner, modern code line, and that other stuff has been purged out of the system. Yeah,
Yep.
but yeah, as you said, you would love a world of just Fiori apps. The reality is, the on-premise world, there's still hundreds of thousands of SAP GUI screens, and there's WebDimpro and Floor Plan Manager, Web GUI. All that is still in use, and there's nobody that can snap their fingers and overnight make it all a different modern UI. As much as Fiori elements and things like that have helped with the automation and switchover and things like that, but it's still just so much out there in the on-premise world that's not going away anytime soon, is it?
Yep.
But I think that's where we, as developers, working for a customer, at a customer, whatever, it's our responsibility as they do new development to help guide them to the right place so they're not building more technical debt. Just because you can do something, particularly when you're looking at building something new, just because you can still use the old technologies doesn't mean you should. And that's where we have to, we all take responsibility to stand up and advise our customers as to what's the best thing for their future, even if it means maybe a little more costly, a little more time in the short term to make that transition. You're better off in the long term. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, the question just came in. Neo will be retired eventually, with all the innovations going to CF. What will happen to Steampunk trial on Neo? Well, the Steampunk trial isn't on Neo. The ABAP Steampunk trial is done via technically behind the scenes. They run some clusters. I even think they use some Kubernetes and some. They're using some What am I thinking of? What? I'm
I
totally
don't
blanking.
know.
What's our open source project to run Kubernetes clusters? I'm gonna kick myself.
Kaima,
No.
Gardner.
Gardner.
Yeah,
God.
yeah.
Yeah, I had a total senior moment there. I talk about it all the time. But yeah, so behind the scenes, we're actually doing some stuff at the Kubernetes level to run those clusters. But when like you create an instance of the Steampunk trial, you're using the service manager in Cloud Foundry to create that instance, and you're going through the UAA. So that's not an EO thing at all. Yeah. We're getting some more questions here. What do we got? Oh yeah, just some people answering for me as I said, as I had a total senior moment there. Yeah. All right. Any? I don't think there's anything else that we wanted to cover today. We were just trying to answer some of the questions here at the end, but we're nearly at the end of our time. So once again, we'll be back on our regular schedule next week on Tuesday. A very special guest, join us. Come meet Lars. Bring your questions. We'll have a nice interactive chat, and I'm really looking forward to that. Otherwise, I hope everyone has enjoyed their Sapphire content this week, and hope you, as soon as we get this file uploader sample live, spend some time this weekend playing around with us, playing around with it. Let us know what you think, and thanks for joining us for another episode. And thanks, Rich, for joining us and walking through the sample with us.
Thanks for having me again.
All right. Until next week, stay safe out there, everybody, and see you again.